Welcome everybody to the 20th stream of DBB Live. Hope you've all had a great day so far. Ready to talk some Detroit basketball. I'm Wes Davenport from Motor City Hoops and Detroit Bad Boys, and I am joined, as always, by the Aussie himself, Jack Kelly from Detroit Bad Boys. And Jack, how you doing? How's your week going? Kind of in the dog days.
I'm good, Wes. I'm good. We are well and truly in the dog days. We're clinging for open run footage to keep us going throughout the I guess is it still summer where you guys are? Or is it now spring
Yeah,
or
it's
autumn?
summer, fairly.
Anyway, to get us through the summer, but
It
I'm
works
good,
the
man.
opposite here. Our weather gets progressively crappier as we approach
Yeah.
basketball season, whereas yours gets better as it goes. So
Yeah, no, like we have some like once the NBA starts, it's pretty much summer here, so it's always good when the basketball comes around. But no, I'm good. Excited to have Brady on today and get his thoughts on the team. So yeah.
Yeah, guys, and as you can see, we're very excited. We got our friend Brady Fredrickson from Detroit Bad Boys back joining the show. So, hey, welcome back. How have you been?
I've been good, man. It's been like a nice little month of disconnecting from, having a bad basketball team on my mind like 10 hours a day. So like that's been cool, but it's been a good summer and I guess now we're like we're ramping back up and like they're talking about preseason and we're talking about, shaky video highlights of guys playing pickup and stuff. So like we're getting back into it slowly but surely.
Yeah, absolutely. And all right, you guys mentioned the pickup stuff. All right, I've touched on this before. I do not have hardly anything to say. I'm excited that they were all there and playing basketball together. That makes me feel good. Outside of that, I've got no takeaways. I only watched about 20 minutes of like hardly anything. So I want to turn the floor over to you guys. Give me all the rundown, give me all the feedback. Like what's going on with these Rico runs? How'd all the guys look? Let's just open it up there.
I think let's hear Brady's thoughts first, because I have some thoughts, but I'd like to get his thoughts first. He's the guest. So Brady, have you had a chance to watch it? And yeah, what were your sort of
Yeah,
takeaways or thoughts?
there's something up on the website yesterday about the highlights that came out most recently, and I watched the whole thing, and like, I don't know, my 2 cents are I'm half with you, Wes, where I couldn't care less about what guys are doing in these types of settings. Now, on the flip side, this Ricoh Heinz setup where guys are playing with their teammates, and it's like the games have some real like NBA caliber like competitiveness going on. Like, there's not the structure, but like the guys like button heads and going at it. Like, there's a real level of like, F you, I'm gonna win this going on. So like that's cool. The only thing I've really gleaned from it was I mean, Cade looked like the best player in that YouTube clip yesterday. Like I thought by far, although I would say the second best player was like Norm Powell, and it was pretty close because he was just nailing every shot he took. Um, but I mean, Cade looked great. Ivy looked crazy. Isaiah Stewart's jumper looked good for 13 seconds when they had one highlight of him, and then like otherwise, I just kind of saw guys doing basketball things, and like I'm gonna say it looks good, but you can't glean anything of note from that. I just don't think there's. It's just exciting, and it's like subjective. Like if my guy plays well, it's awesome. I love it. If my guy plays bad, I didn't watch it. I don't know what happened. It's just pickup ball.
Yeah, it's that's so true, that last part. If they play well, they're a stud. If not, that's just pick up. But I think like after watching the Team USA scrimmage, so hang on, let me go back a minute. So this time last year, I'm pretty sure like the same things that happened. Like Cade, Jaden Ivey, and Jalen Durant and Stu all went to the Rico runs, and I remember watching that and getting really excited. And because it is exciting, and there's an element to it, like Brady touched on, like they're out there, they're playing. Like I like how at these runs they put the teams together because it's like they can build some form of chemistry. Like that means something. But after watching like Cade and Jalen Durant at the USA scrimmages and the level of competitiveness there, and just obviously the talent on the court, watching these Rico runs was very like they are trying, but there's also not a lot of defense, especially in transition. Like there was just so much like throw it ahead, just for like open layups, and like obviously in these environments they're not going to go up and try and chase down block because they don't want twisted ankles and broken legs, all that kind of thing. But I guess on the positives, because I think some of the things I enjoyed was Asar Thompson sort of just on-ball defense stuck out a little bit. Like he was just to see him sort of being really disruptive. Like I say that it is pickup, but his sort of, I think going into the draft, I undersold his athleticism, as weird as that sounds. And I think it's because I was comparing him a lot to Amen, but his just sort of like speed and the way he glides around the court and even some of his strength at times, I think I really undersold that. And look, it's just pickup, but that really stood out to me a little bit, just some of the defensive possessions. He was guarding Norm Powell a lot, who was hitting tough shots, but it's forcing him into tough shots. The other thing, and this stood out to me in the USA scrimmages, is Cade and Jalen Duren, you wouldn't think they've only played 80 minutes together last season. They have some really nice chemistry, and I think something I'm going to be really intrigued to see is just how much Jalen Duren benefits from playing with Cade. I think Cade's going to benefit significantly with having Duren as his role man in the starting lineup, but maybe Jalen Duren's going to score 14, 15 points this year, because I could see him easily scoring 4 to 5 baskets a game, just rolling to the rim with Cade. Just the way Cade plays in pick and roll, it stands out. No matter what the level of competition is, he's just always at his same pace. But yeah, look, I will be honest, just watching those scrimmages was like, yeah, I don't think there's a heap you can take away from it apart from just seeing the young guys build some chemistry together.
Yeah. No, I mean, obviously I agree. And I've talked about it before, but so I wanted to bring up quickly the only negative thing, and I was actually surprised there was something negative that came out of these Rico runs. Looked like some people were a little worried about Cade's ball handling. I mean, did you guys see a bunch of that? Is there anything maybe to be a little concerned about, since you said there wasn't a ton of defense? Like what's the rundown there?
The idea of not a ton of defense is like rotations, I think, and like help defense more than it is on ball. I mean, guys like Bones Highland, I think, was one who picked his pocket 1 or 2 times. And like Bones Highland doesn't play in the playoffs because he can't play defense. But like any little guy against a dude like, because Cade does. I mean, I would say one of Cade's like quote unquote problems that like doesn't get talked about very often is that he kind of has the same thing that like, and I'm not comparing them, but like Magic Johnson used to dribble the ball really high. Like Magic dribbled the ball like up here. And he was doing it with such velocity that it didn't matter. And back then, guys obviously weren't doing the type of stuff they are now. But Cade still doesn't really keep that handle super tight because of how methodically he plays. It's not like he's speeding around and stuff. So like, I guess he's, primed to be picked once in a while. But like, I mean, honestly, of all things, and it's not a worry, but I tweeted this the other day, was like every highlight I saw of Jaden Ivey, whether it was that viral one where, oh shoot, the guy from the little fella from Toronto, Marquise Noel, locked him up, but locked him up in a way where it was like there was no obviously foul calls because there's a lot of hand checking. Like 2004 Pistons locked him up, and then like some of the turnovers he had in that YouTube clip the other day, like that wasn't great to see. But I also think it just shows that he's the kind of guy who needs a little more structure than other people, just to be able to harness all that like speed he plays with, because it's not just his body, his feet moving that fast. His brain, I think, still goes 3,000 miles per hour when he's out there. And so like I think you saw that often, especially when like Cade's got the ball in those clips 90% of the time. So I'm sure when Ivy gets it, he's like, okay, I gotta do something now because I know there's somebody videotaping. So like it's just one of those things where I don't worry about it because it's not how it's going to be come October, but like it's worth mentioning,
Yeah, I think so. Like that's a great point from Brady. Like you can tell, yeah, Jaden's brain's just going at like a million miles an hour. Like it looks like it. And so, and I couldn't agree more. Like when I think of Jaden Ivey as a rookie, like and just in general as a player, like I don't think of like an ISO sort of shot creator. Like he needs to be set up to an extent. And yeah, there's also that element where just like Cade's going to have the ball a lot and Jaden's probably going to need to sort of figure out his spots when it's time to create and when it's just time to move the ball. Or like one of the good things was just seeing Jaden knock down open threes in those runs. I think they clipped out some misses, but just I think he knocked down 3 or 4. So you can imagine he shot the ball pretty well. So another reason why, like, I think he will benefit with Cade being there is just all the opportunities that he didn't get for much of his rookie season. Like, he's going to have a lot more opportunities to get open shots, and feels like he's going to knock them down at a decent rate.
Yeah, absolutely. So, kind of on that, well, let's take a second and look back here. And guys, if you're tuning in live right now, make sure to get your questions here in the chat. We're going to get to them in a second. But Brady, we haven't had you on since I think it was right after the draft lottery and that precipitous fall down to the 5th pick. So, obviously a ton's happened since then. We're curious to get your offseason review, where things are standing, what your expectations are. Like, floor is yours.
Yeah, where to begin? I don't know, dating back, so we had the draft first. I think, we mentioned this, we were talking before the call, but we didn't mention Sarah Thompson once in the last conversation we had, which is funny because he was still right there. And I think I do vaguely remember us talking about the guys in the overtime elite and just still needing to do more research or kind of figure out more about how the translation might, how it might look and how that competition level would work. And so, from what I saw from him in summer league, and it was summer league, but the physical traits are there. Jack, you're right. He's, the athlete that is going to, fill a void they haven't filled on this roster in years. And, if his shot comes around to 30% this year, I think he'll be a very impactful player for them. Starting off the bench, playing the 3, playing whatever. So, I think that's good. And then free agency, I don't know. I pride myself on being one of the people in this community who do not fire off pissed off hot takes often. I probably broke my rule when they traded for Joe Harris though, because I just was like, what the hell, guys? And Joe Harris is fine. If he doesn't play but 5 minutes a game this year, I'll be happy. That means something went right. But that trade did not inspire much in me. But trading for Monty Morris, who was a guy who personally even dating back to when he was in college, because he was one of this is a sidetrack, but he was at, he played at Iowa State when they were really good. And he was one of the rare players who was from I think he's from Saginaw, that Tom Izzo was not able to land or did not really recruit to Michigan State. And so when he was in college, he was awesome. And I was like, shit, they could really use him at Michigan State. And then he got the NBA and he was the exact same player. And those are the kind of guys that I love, who don't change their identity for a second. And maybe their ceiling is just, starter on a bad team or a good 6-man. But I just love his game and I love how steady he plays. And I think that he, he'll fit what they're going to run this year with Monty Williams to perfection. So that was, that made up for a lot of my anger at the start of the free agency period. But I don't know. Overall, I think they're better, but I think they're mostly just better because they get Cade Cunningham back. And Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren get a year to get better. That's really the only thoughts in my head of why are they better this year. It's those 3 things. Plus, I think Monty Williams is just, an elevating coach. He's as good enough to bring the talent from here to here, just on, based on his stature and his ability and his system and all that stuff.
So if I could ask them, do you think that was their goal, maybe coming into the offseason? If we're going to improve because our guys did it and we're not going to put anyone over the top? Or do you think they maybe went into free agency and kind of struck out on some negotiations and pivoted from there? I mean, obviously we don't know anything, but.
Right. I think it's probably a big part of it was expecting that. But I think they were so bad that I don't think you could, the second unit, I mean, obviously they're going to go from having, one of the most lackluster. And I think that bench unit, though, is a good point where the Pistons team we saw in the last 20 games when they lost 19 of whatever, is not going to be it's hard to compare because we have this recency bias with like the Pistons sucked for 2 months and it was horrible. But also, like, we didn't have Boyan for 10 or so games. We didn't have Isaiah Stewart. We were watching a lot of James Wiseman and a lot of Eugene Omoruyi. Like, those kind of things that, like, are not conducive to winning. And obviously, no Cade Cunningham. So, like, I have a trouble, like, looking at how it went last year and, like, not finding it better. But I do think that just the internal growth was a big part of it because like they're not going to go sign anybody. There was no star out there that was going to fix this. That's the main thing. Is I don't think there was one player they could have thrown all their money at that would have solved any problems. Even Cam Johnson would have solved, you know, a minor problem, which is shooting and power forward minutes. But like I don't think that the 60 games he gives you would have had much, if any, tangible impact on the win loss on its own.
Because yeah, ultimately it's down to the 3 to 4 young guys. And I just wanted to ask, I've seen some things on Twitter and I actually brought this up a couple of weeks ago because Sam Vicini actually mentioned it on the Game Theory pod, but the idea of Jaden Ivey coming off the bench. No, I've sort of just pivoted here, but it just came to mind and I just wanted to have a chat about it because we spoke about it a couple of weeks ago. Like, I personally think it's quite insane. Not because I think like the lineups people are suggesting or that I don't think Jaden Ivey, like it could benefit the team in the short term, but the way I look at it is that you've drafted these 3 to 4 guys in the past 2 to 3 drafts. Like you play them together as much as possible and they're going to take you as far as they can go. And if Jaden Ivey can't start alongside Cade, then we have some issues. But I just want to get your guys' thoughts on that. I'll start with Brady.
No, I mean that's the gist of it. What you said at the end there. If they can't play together, you failed. Like it was a bad pick. You failed. Like there's the only situation, and it's like ironic that we can go back to this, but like Oklahoma City with Russ, KD, Harden. Harden came off the bench. He was talented enough to start for that team, and he played starter minutes, and like I understand all that. But like, he sat behind an all defense, off guard in Thabo Sefolosha. Like it was not like Alec Burks or Monte Morris played in front of him. It was Thabo Sefolosha, who was one of the, 10 best defenders in the NBA at the time, playoff series. And like, is there a universe where Jaden Ivey is a great 6-man like that James Harden role? Like I don't think that's impossible. And like my personal, like in my head, like the Pistons are going to have to go get somebody. I'm not all right. So I think we talked about this last time, but like there's 2 camps. You either think that all the young guys are going to grow together and they're going to skyrocket and be good, or you think that like Cade and Duran or Cade and Ivy or Ivy and Duran or however you want to say it are going to figure it out, and someone's going to have to go away to then find a guy who helps you go up. I don't think that they're just going to organically grow into a contender. I just think the odds and probability of that are super low. We've seen so many teams try that, and unless Cade is like Luka or like a top 10 legitimate player, I just don't see how that's going to work. So like, down the line, if you need to go try and get a wing who like makes a difference, like you trade Jaden Ivey, I understand it. Like that's fine. It may not be the perfect situation for him, and that's what you decide. But like, we're way too early to say that like he can or can't fit, or he should or shouldn't start. Like, this is a team that's trying to win 32 games next year. Like, start the guys and see what they've got.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think I honestly cannot conceive a world where he's not the starting shooting guard, at least to start off the year. I mean, if you get to a spot in January where it just ain't working, like I think that's one of the benefits of having all of these really capable veterans on the roster. Like if one of these young guys is really struggling through the first half of the season, yeah, you can bench him. You can bench him, and there's going to be someone suitable and actually able to perform that can step up until they get their bearings back underneath them. But to start off the year, no, Jaden Ivey's going to start. They're way too far invested in him, and like you said, Jack, I don't think it's that the lineups that you could do with it. Like logically, some of it could make sense, especially if you think Jaden Ivey's this guy who really needs the ball in his hands and maybe has some point guard potential. Like I get it. I get what we're trying to create when you push Ivy to the bench. But at the same time, he's your top 5 pick who averaged almost 17 points per game last year. He's a super athlete. He's got all of these talent and potential things going for him. You're so heavily invested in his future at this point. I just can't imagine that they wouldn't start him
Yeah,
next to Cade to start the year. Because on top of that, too, you have seen Cade, Ivy, and Duran out on the floor together. What, 5 games
it's
that's
yeah,
probably happened?
Never.
Tops,
It's
right? You
they've never shared the floor together. I can
so
really.
there you
confirm.
go.
I
There you
have looked
go.
it
Yeah.
up. They never in those 11 or whatever games. They never all played at the same time. So like
That's
again, to your
insane.
point, it was because Duran wasn't really like in the circle of trust at that point. If you think about it, so like his minutes were basically always with Killian Hayes or with Cade or with Jaden. So there was like this weird, like the guard rotation last year was kind of like effed up because they just didn't really know what to do and where to put people because Burks hadn't come back yet. So like the whole
Mhm.
thing was like in flux. So they've never played together in an NBA like regular season game. I've looked that up before.
And
Yeah.
on top
So
of
so there
all
you
of
go.
that, the thing that
Sorry.
like on top of like you've drafted Jaden top 5. There's an investment, all the other stuff we've sort of discussed. Like I just feel like he complements Cade really well on offense. I'm not saying he's perfect, but they are like a yin and yang in my opinion. Like in their play styles, which is why Jaden's shooting improvement, especially in the back half of last season, was so huge because the whole time he's doing that, I'm just thinking like as soon as Cade Cunningham's here, like we're really going to see those percentages, I believe, get to a point where he's really damaging from behind the 3 if you're like going to help off him or that sort of thing. So yeah, I just think those two complement each other really well. So I definitely think there'll be times where Jaden's running the point or he's playing alongside Monte Morris and vice versa with Cade. But yeah, I love the idea of those two together from like what we saw at the start of last season. Like when I went back through some film, like Jaden actually like was cutting a lot more alongside
He
Cade
was.
naturally. Like of course, like because he didn't have the ball in his hands every possession, but like I think there's a willingness from Jaden there to play off ball and sort of thrive as like a cutter and just doing stuff off the ball. I think he can be really damaging there too.
That's a thing, cutting and moving without the ball. But like, I don't think we felt it as much at the end of Dwayne Casey's tenure because, of course, it was like, I would say after Cade went out last year, like all philosophical ideals about what he was about as a coach kind of were thrown out the window. And he was just like, let's make sure this shit doesn't fall apart before we get to the offseason. Like that was his goal. And he did a good job of that. I'll give him credit. But if you go back to Toronto and early in Detroit, like he was like Toronto, they played iso ball. Like DeMar DeRozan isolated a lot, and Kyle Lowry in isolation and pick and roll situations. And then they came here, and it was Blake Griffin isolated, like very like centered around him and stuff. So like you bring that philosophy to Cade's rookie year, and even Jeremy Grant's first year. Like it's a lot of just your turn, my turn, your turn, my turn, and it works sometimes. Like if the guys are good enough, it works. Like LeBron and Dwayne Wade for 2 years until they figured it out. We're just like, okay, I'm going to isolate this time. I'm going to do it this time. And it got to the finals. But I think with this team and with the way Monty Williams does it, and I always cite this article that Damon Allred wrote for us, where it was basically about Monty's like 0.5 offense, where it's just about quickly making decisions. That's going to be big. And that's why, like these clips, when I watch these Ricoh Heinz things, like I like that Cade can pound the rock a bunch and score. And I know that like Ivy that one play, dribbled 17,000 times. But like that shit's not going to be every time down anymore. Like they're not going to need to do that. They're going to be passing and moving. And like we said, Ivy cutting and playing off of Cade, who's going to have the ball. Like that's the kind of stuff that everybody has to do. And I think that Sir Thompson will do that. I think that like, guys at the bench will move without the ball. Burks moves without the ball. But that was just a sidebar. Sorry. My thing was
Good.
Ivy with Cade shot 32% from 3, averaged 15 points, 5 boards, 4 assists, shot 44 from the field. Like pretty good stats. Like basically his season stats. Then when he was basically the point guard by himself at the end of the year, he was shooting 36% from three, averaging 19 points and 7 assists. So like if he can just be a pressure valve as a off-ball shooter and also like secondary creation, like I don't see how that doesn't work. Defensively, he needs to get better, but like all the tools are there for it to make sense. I just don't understand doubting it today when we've only seen what 50, 60 games out of Jaden Ivey and about the same out of Cade Cunningham,
No, exactly. I'm right there with you guys. And I think before we move on to a few questions that we got here, I think something about Jaden Ivey that it was a big deal before that draft. I remember it being a huge deal, and almost no one's brought it up since. Was that he went into all these interviews with teams and told them he's not a point guard. Like that man wants to score the ball. Yeah, he wants to win. He wants to pass so that he can win, right? He doesn't want to Kobe it up and just not move the ball at all. But like, dude wants to score. Dude does not want to be the guy running the offense. He views himself as a scoring guard. And that's exactly what you want next to Cade. Like, yeah, you want a guy that's got all the talent to do all this stuff, but also doesn't want something different. Like unless he's changed his mind, which I doubt it. He doesn't seem like that kind of kid. Like he still thinks the same way. He still thinks that he's a scorer first and foremost. So I think this year you unlock that. And I'm actually pretty excited to see it. I think you guys are spot on with how that fit could go. It could be special.
One
For
more
sure. I
note
just
on
want to.
Ivy.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go,
Jack.
Brady. No,
No, I was
you
just gonna
go.
say we're talking about like, what we know about guys and what we don't know. And like, if you just looked at Cade Cunningham's on-court performance, you'd say that guy can't shoot. Like, he can't shoot threes. And I think I hear that on like the radio here locally in Detroit and stuff. Like, people doubting those skills that he showed for 19 years before he got to the NBA and had 60 bad games of shooting. But Ivy pre-draft was like, and like people I trust who are like draft people would say that like, well, he's got zero mid-range game. He has no idea what to do between the 3-point line and the rim. And last year, and I think this was probably the biggest benefit outside of having to run point and figure that out in the NBA was he had to learn to score when he couldn't just get to the rim or shoot threes. And like, I'm looking at his shot chart right now. I mean, overall, he was about league average from like mid-range, which if you can do that and shoot league average from three and get better at the rim, which I think he will as he gets more confident and gets better, ball handling, gets better spacing, like off to the races. Like it just shows that he can be a multi-level scorer. He's not just a slasher, just a driver, just a spot-up guy. But I think there's potential for more, even if he hasn't necessarily done all facets together because of situations and the things that are out of his control.
So I wanted
Jack,
to
real
ask,
quick, if I could jump one thing in real quick on this one. Jaden Ivey, the mid-range coming through is so huge for him, like you said, because now he can be a 3-level scorer. Because even if his percentages around the rim don't get better, he's still physically capable of getting to the rim at a rate where the defense is going to have to guard him. So like it doesn't matter if he's going to shoot, 25% from the rim. If he's a guy that if he gets past his first guy and gets all the way to the rim, no one's just going to step to the side and let him go take a layup. Like it doesn't matter what his percentage is there. He's going to the rim. So it's all about how efficient he can get. But that he figured out the mid-range means that defensively you have to guard him at all three spots, which is huge for him. So
he was below average. He was below average at the rim. To be clear, like 60% is 60.3% at the league average. He shot 50.1%. So like the athleticism still has to translate to those finishes. And I've noticed this in a lot of the offseason clips I've seen of him where like he'll take the baseline and he'll go up and he'll, score over top of guys with like dunks and things like that. And I noticed a lot of last year, and I haven't like gone back and watched it, but like if you were to go back and look at a lot of his attempts, I think it's a lot of like contact here and him going off to the side and trying to kind of, soar around it, which I think is just a learning thing. Like you can't get away with that unless you are like Tony Parker with the, the teardrop. Otherwise, it's just not going to be a sustainable thing for you.
Yeah, and Wes and I actually spoke about this the other week. Like he also just missed a ton of like open layups. Like in transition, he'd be just going too fast. Like, and it sounds really simple, but like he'd just like blow the layup, like just a bit too much. Like I don't know, power on it. But like, so I think a lot of it as well can be fixed up with just, coming into year two, a bit more like adjusted to the pace of everything. And just, yeah, I don't like, because he was well below average, as you sort of outlined there. But I do think some of that can be quite easily corrected for his second season. And if he can get to average at the rim, yeah.
And one thing too that I always look at, and like I do when I look at people's like when I write something on like the site about any player, I would like overanalyze these shot charts because you can see so much from it in terms of shot selection. And like you can't tell what shots are open and what shots aren't, unfortunately, but you can kind of see the diet of where they're shooting and stuff. And like the one good thing about Ivy compared to other guys, like this is Killian Hayes' problem for a long time was that there's that like space where it's like rims here, free throw lines here, and like this awkward area of shots, which are like I said, probably the most difficult variety of 2-pointers unless you're a big guy, because you're just in the trees, but you're nowhere near the rim, and it's like the worst kind of mid-range shot. And so Ivy doesn't live on that too much, but I think the improvement is getting from the 15-foot jumper to the rim. And like you guys said, finishing those shots. Like there's that middle area in case you're in trouble, but like go just freaking dunk the ball, dude. You are like one of the 5 most athletic guards in the NBA. Just go do it,
No, for sure. For sure. Look, I did have a question, but like I personally like, and maybe I scroll Twitter too much, but I feel like I don't know, I just feel like Jaden Ivey's sort of out of the 4 rookies, the one that people are the most down on. I don't know. Is that something you guys notice, or am I just like looking at some 17-year-olds Twitter timelines too much? Like,
It's that,
like,
but also I think you're right. I think it's just like people don't like to admit it, but I mean, we are talking about like the most like irrelevant basketball team in the league. Like I cannot think of a team that nationally people watch or think about less. And it's
yeah,
warranted
crazy.
because they don't give you a reason to really pay deep attention outside of like it takes Cade Cunningham scoring like I'm pretty sure the biggest like amount of attention I remember the Pistons getting last year was either one of their like dumb shit moves they made at the trade deadline, or it was like Cade Cunningham in that one game he had where he was like, was it like 38? It was against the Hawks. He went for like 38, 8 and 8. It was like a sick, like put it all together. Here's the peak kind of game. I just think that's the problem is like people look at it and it's like, and the Kings fans probably would have said the same thing about their team 5 years ago, like when De'Aaron Fox was doing great things and nobody was like giving him any credit. But like, you got to matter for people to think you matter. And that sounds stupid, but like, that's just what public perception is. If you're not relevant, then, a glance at the box score on a Tuesday night when a guy has a 4 for 18 shooting night is going to stick in their brain versus, seeing them countless times or hearing conversation about them countless times.
Yeah.
No, I agree.
Just to clarify,
I agree with everything that he said.
I was talking about just in the Pistons community itself, but I agree with everything Brady said. Like, and the funny thing about that that Cade performance, like the Pistons lost that game by like close to 20 points. so like there is not a more irrelevant team, unfortunately. But as you said, warranted.
Jack, I got a theory for you about inside the Pistons community with the Ivy hate though. Well, it's not hate; it's just lukewarmness, I guess. And then after this, let's hop onto some questions. But I think Jaden Ivey showed a lot of what he could do in a couple years when he gets closer to his peak. And I think Jalen Duren is still an extraordinary ball of clay that is very moldable and could be just about anything at this point. You don't know what he is. He played so few minutes. Maybe he can dribble. He shot some threes in summer league. He did some ISOs. Like, who knows what Jalen Duren could be? We know what Jaden Ivey at least is on track to maybe become one day. So I think it's the concreteness of what Jaden Ivey might do versus who knows? This guy could be anything.
That's so true. This point. No, that's an excellent point. I think some of it as well is to do like people might be comparing Ivy to Cade as well. And Cade just had this mystique or aura God, I actually hate using
Yeah.
that word. Sorry. But he did hate. Cade has this aura. Like, he actually does as a rookie. Like, there was a true excitement. Like, he was like, obviously #1 overall pick. And then Jaden Ivey comes in and he gets his moment in the spotlight last season with Cade out. And he's a much more erratic type of player. So I see it. I just sometimes am a bit like, I think this guy's going to be really special. But yeah, maybe I'm just extremely biased.
I think you're right, Wes. There is like this. That's true. I think you can dream on, in theory, you can dream on Duran a lot more. But like, I still think, an athletic guard who can shoot and score at the rim and create and rebound and do all the stuff that Jaden Ivey has shown he can do in bursts. Like, even someone who is, scarred by so many failed Pistons, point guard prospects over the years. Like,
I know who you're talking about.
Wait, which one? Be specific.
Because I know it's one of Wes's favorite players. I think Rodney Stuckey.
No, I
Brandon Knight.
He's not talking Rodney.
I have a warm spot in my heart for him. No, it's Brandon Knight. I think of Brandon Knight's the one that like really came in with like hoopla as a big college player, because Rodney Stuckey was a small school guy. Like, Knight had
Kemba.
Yeah, Knight over Kemba, and like it was kind of like
and Jimmer, but
yeah. But like, yeah, my thing is just, I've seen so many point guards, flop, and like I think Jaden Ivey last year was better than any season of Brandon Knight, any season of Rodney Stuckey, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
So like, I just think that the idea, like, you're right, Wes, people do downplay his potential, but I really think like I can see a much more valuable, hell yeah, Stuckey bobblehead. I have
Love
a couple.
it.
Hold on. Let me just show these off real quick. Let me show these. This is Chauncey Billups. This is my work bobblehead. But look how he spelled his name wrong. Bilps. And then this one, there's a funny backstory to this. I was a little too tipsy at a party in college, and I was in someone's room, and he was showing us some stuff. He had like a shelf of bobbleheads. So I was like looking at him kind of, and I was like, this is cool. I was late. And he's like, all right, I'm going downstairs. I was like, okay, I'll be out in a sec. And me and my buddy were like, yo, is that John Barry? So we stole a John Barry, and it does not look it looks nothing like John Barry. Like, it's, who is this man? Who is this guy? But yeah, awesome. That's funny.
But I'm just Googling John Barry because I don't even know what he looks like.
Oh my God, he's bald and he has a goatee.
Nothing
and
like that
the Pistons.
He's bald.
Nothing like how you just.
He's bald.
He looks nothing like that.
Shiny head. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking now.
Great. Honestly though, I will say, like, one of the best 3-point shooting seasons in Pistons. I think it might be the highest shooting percentage from three ever in team history. He shot like 42% from three in 2002, I think, right before they got good, really good.
I love it. I did not think we'd be talking about John Barry.
All right, you guys need to transition now, because I have led us astray.
Yeah, we've gone off track here, but this is what happens in, what is it? It's August.
August. Yeah.
True.
All right, I might dive into some questions or some of the comments we've got here. So,
hang on, John Barry, 47% from 3-point range in 01-02. That's freaking good, dude. 47%.
That's ridiculous. How many
attempts a game off the bench? 3 attempts off the bench a game. Yeah. That's pretty good though. Like, still, it's not today numbers, but like 47.
It's nuts.
I mean, he wasn't a high minutes guy off the bench, was he? Right? I mean, he was a low minute chucker, and he was. There you go.
Oh, yeah. 24 a game that year. That was like his most minutes he ever played, I think.
All right. Yeah. Okay, John.
Love it.
John Barry.
I'm going to transition to some questions here. We're off the rails. YouTube user. I expect a ton less Killian minutes and Monte Morris. And Monte Morris replacing Kojo is huge. So, I guess, what do we think? I think this was a comment to one of our earlier conversations, but Brady, what do you think happens with Killian Hayes?
I don't care. That's mean.
But
I'm not a Killian Hayes guy. No, I think he will be. I don't think that trading him at this point makes any sense. I get unless they want to free up that roster spot and go find somebody, like trade him if that's the case. But overall, like you're just gonna it's almost just like buying out of something for 10 cents on the dollar you paid for it. Like they're gonna trade him for a second round pick that has enough protections that like it's never gonna, translate and come over to you. So like at that point, is it worth it to just open up a spot and sign like, no offense, or a Eugene caliber player, or like does that open up the spot for you to go acquire somebody better, or down the line, do we think that like Killian plays, 20 games in the first half of the year and he looks, tolerable but worse than Monte Morris, and like the big trade that I'm talking about pops up, or a trade pops up that can make them better, and it's like, hey, kind of how that Dallas thing I think we talked about that last month on the Dallas trade that was going around where it was like Boyan and Killian Hayes, like maybe you can include him in that and it's enough to push a deal over the line. Like it's just I think he needs to show somebody else, not the Pistons, somebody else that like there's enough to dream on, and then you just can sell at that point. But I don't think he has a future here, and I don't think he has a future in the NBA.
So to follow off that, if he's on the roster come opening night or preseason, mainly opening night, like when I think of the guard rotation, you already have Cade and Ivy, obviously. Then you have Monte Morris. Then you have Alec Burks. I think it's fair to say all four of those guys are definitely ahead of him in the rotation. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Is there minutes for him as the fifth guard? And then there's obviously Marcus Sasser, but I think Killian's ahead of him just for the sake of this. But like, how? Yeah, I also can't imagine him just sitting on the bench because he's gotten so much run in the 3 seasons when he's been healthy. So
I think he's going to have a choice. I think he's behind Sasser too, for the record. I mean, they just drafted Sasser.
It depends on the situation, I think. I think the thing about Sasser is if the Pistons needed if Monte Morris gets hurt, then I think Killian Hayes plays. If Alec Burks gets hurt, I think Sasser plays. I just don't think that they would thrust Sasser into that role now unless they were committed to then staggering like Killian or Cade and Ivy all the time. Because I don't think you can throw Sasser and Burks, even though they are both hypothetically capable of playing point guard, out there with hopes of like not leaving your big man on an island. Like that was the thing last year a lot that happened. It's like in those rare situations where you had like Alec Burks and as kind of that primary ball handler, like there wasn't a lot of like, pick and roll actions and things where he was creating. He played point guard in New York briefly his last year there, I think. He kind of filled in for a while.
He did.
But I believe they also had Julius Randle, who is essentially he's not as glitzy and glamorous as others, but he's a point forward who can do all that stuff too. So it's like a different situation where you're still a secondary ball handler, even if you take the inbounds pass and dribble it to here. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, I think Sasser's like almost like, I think he just plays in spots. Like, I was very high and like when he was drafted, I was like, oh yeah, he's going to play. But considering they bought in Monte Morris, like, I don't see Sasser as a true point guard. I see him more just as like like obviously like he's brought in for his shooting prowess and like scoring ability. So I think maybe he's just insurance if Monte goes down with injury, or Alec Burks. That is another thing to consider. Like last season, like a lot of these players were injured, like to open the season, not just these fake-ish injuries, like following the trade deadline. Like this team, that was one of the things that was really frustrating early on last season was Brady Harlett, Alec Burks was out to start the season.
Yeah.
Marvin Bagley was injured. Jalen Duren actually got injured, I believe, after like his first 5 games or something in there. Like there's just so many injuries. They could never get the rotation healthy. So there will be injuries, but just to round it out in the Killian thing, yeah, I just can't imagine him sitting there on the bench, not being a part of the game. I mean, I know that's probably what's going to happen.
Show up?
Yeah, no.
The kid's not playing. He's not going to be out there. I'm sorry. He's not going to be out there unless there's an injury. So
yeah,
no.
It's wild, but that's what he's going to be doing.
I mean,
It's weird.
if he came back and was like, "Hey, I can shoot threes now," like that would change the equation, and that's the part that I cannot like. All of the other stuff he does, I think the things that this is a great thing. Going back to your Jaden Ivey skepticism, why is there skepticism, loudly in some corners about Jaden Ivey? Then there is still so much positive vocal support for Killian Hayes when like I can see the NBA player in one of them, and I have to like and but you to get like all the way on another guy. Like I find that's part of why I'm ready for this era to end because it's just a pain to deal with every single night. But like that's not Killian Hayes' fault. That's the discourse's fault around him.
Yes.
But going
Yes.
back, and this is the thing that like if Monty Morris wasn't there, I'd feel differently about this. But if you go back and look at all of like the recent Monty Williams teams, and I've done this for people who are worried about like all the centers playing and how that's going to work out. It's like not Monty Morris, Monty Williams. Monty's never played two centers more than 20 minutes per game, like in Phoenix. He never did it unless he had to, which was last year when Aiden was hurt, I believe. If you go back years and years and years, he's always had a point guard on his team who has fit that like stereotypical pass first, keep the ball safe, make open shots, lead your team type of role. And that goes all the way back to like Ricky Rubio, who he's mentioned in press conferences his first year there when they made the big jump. So like I think that archetype of like this guy off the bench who can settle everything down when shit gets crazy with a young team is very important to him. And I think that's why they went out and got Monte Morris. And that's why I think
Yeah.
they probably looked at Killian Hayes and said, this, there's just not enough there for us to rely on that. Because I don't think he would have gone and got a guy who's basically like, a better pure point guard than the purest point guard on the team if there wasn't some doubt like that. So then when it comes to, Sasser, I don't think that Sasser fills that role. I think it's a very specific thing that Monty Morris or Monty Williams, Jesus, is very like focused on.
For sure. The way I look at Monty Morris is he's just like a supercharged, more creative passing version of Kojo. And like Wes and I are both sort of, we were, I wouldn't
I
say
can
we were,
see that.
like,
I
I'm
can
just saying in
really
terms
see
of
that.
role, like they play different, but I just think like that, I still go back to all the time, like Cade played his best basketball as a rookie with Kojo next to him. Like, I'm
I
still
can
like
see
that second half of that rookie season when he was healthy and they actually played some competitive basketball. Like Kojo was playing alongside him, just supporting him as a shooter, release valve, ball handling, like, and Monte Morris is like in his prime and like arguably the best backup guard in the league. So, and I was super pumped about that trade. But I might move on to another question here. Once again, from YouTube user, who I assume YouTube user is the same person. So shout out to you for tuning in. I really hope they construct lineups balanced with vets and youth. My lineups would be Cade, Ivy, Boyan, Stu, Duran. I assume that's for the starters. And then Morris, Burks, Asar, Livers, Wiseman. So question out of this for Brady. One, I've one here. Who do you see as the backup big? Is it Wiseman or Bagley, or is it Isaiah Stewart?
It's not going
as of today.
Isaiah Stewart will start. I'm pretty confident in that. You don't optically. I think it's just you don't give a guy that contract and then start somebody who is either worse or unproven in front of him. I think I lean toward that starting lineup with Cade, Ivy, Boyan, Stu, and Duran. Like I've gone back and forth a lot because I've seen people talking on Twitter about like the idea of starting like Sar at 4 or at the 3 and then Boyan at the 4. But like I still don't know. Yeah, maybe that was it. I still think that there's the same like maybe you look back at how they tried that with Sadiq Bey and him last year and like those two are very similar like, profile players, but like it didn't work at all. It was, a train wreck. And then obviously now you've got a pogo stick and an athletic freak next to him. But I think you're still losing a lot of shooting with the SAR out there. And it's like, I don't know. I just think maybe the only way that Boyan can be a starting four in today's NBA is if he has someone like he had in Utah with Rudy Gobert who can like just clean up all of his defensive miscues and everyone's defensive miscues, because that's the other part of it is you always think like if this guy does bad, the center will clean it up. But like if those teams often have a really good power forward too who can handle, or a wing, like a small forward who can do it. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's
Royce O'Neal for Utah.
yeah,
Good defender.
Rice O'Neal, who's not like a good player, but like is a solid like fills a role type of dude.
He's
You
okay.
know, like no one's
Yeah.
like no one's. I mean, he started for Utah,
Yeah.
sure, but like there's a lot of guys like that who are just whatever. But I think in general, I think that lineup makes sense. The bench is interesting to me because the Morris Burks, Asar thing makes sense. I don't know. I'm lower on Livers than most people. I think there's a lot of dreaming on him to imagine the player that we talk about him being, which he really isn't yet. So that's the bigger question. I mean, Wiseman and Bagley, like, door number one, you fall off a cliff. Door number two, you like walk into a wall. Like, which one's better? I don't know. They're both bad. So, like, at that point,
Well, that's why I said, so there's a couple of scenarios where Stu can be a backup big still. Like one, if he's starting, like he plays like the first 4 minutes, then he goes out and replaces Durant. Like I see that. I don't think that happens, but that's the scenario. Or when we were talking about that starting lineup of Bay and Boyan last season, like they had Stu at the 5 for a lot of that in the first like 15 to 20 games. So that was probably another reason that lineup just didn't work. And then, so that's why, like, I think the starting lineup you outlined, Brady, and YouTube user outlines, that's what I think we see opening night. But the reason as well, I'd be okay with the lineup. I was about to call you Stu, Wes. The lineup that Wes is big on of having Asar at the 3, Boyan at the 4, and Durant at the 5 is because last season Stu was playing the 5 when Cade was in the lineup.
and like rotations
So
are
you up,
like
but yeah, you're putting a lot on Jalen Duren in that scenario, which defensively, I think he's still a couple of seasons away. But yeah, sorry to cut you off.
No, I was just gonna say rotations are linear in that like we always think here's the bench lineup, here's the starting lineup, and like rarely does it occur. Maybe for 8 minutes a game do you see the bench being out there by themselves. And I don't think it matters if you're the Pistons or any mid-tier playoff team in the NBA. I won't say the like super good teams because they have benches, but like even the Nuggets last year, the minutes that their bench was out there by itself, people were like fans of the Nuggets were holding their breath because they were like, can we hold this together without Jokic, without Murray, without Gordon? So like I think in general you're going to have these situations where like, it seems like the Pistons have too many guys for their own good, but like in the end, I mean, they're going to stagger this enough that their best players are together as much as they possibly can. So like if Wiseman's out there, I honestly don't think that Wiseman or Bagley, if you consider Duran and Stu the starting guys, just for hypotheticals, I don't think those guys live in combined for 20 minutes. Like I'm confident in that, unless there's an injury. I just don't see how Monty would change his philosophy because he hasn't played two big guys that much since he was in New Orleans with like Emeka Okafor and whomever else. Ryan Anderson. I think it was Ryan Anderson. Ryan Anderson. So like a long time ago. So like it's been a long time since he's believed that. So he's adjusted his perspective. And I just think that, Dwayne Casey was doing a lot of things last year that came in connection in unison with what Troy wanted to see, which was let's see, Wiseman play a lot. Let's see Ivy play the point guard exclusively. And like, they were losing games, do it. But like now, I think this is like what Monty says goes. And if you're like you guys said, if you're playing like crap, doesn't matter what position you are, like take a seat. We'll find somebody else. But I just don't see him changing the philosophy that made him arguably the best coach in the NBA in Phoenix. Like, why would he change that when he comes to Detroit, the worst team in the league? Like, I just think there's more. It's not as cut and dry as that, but there's a lot we can glean from the way that he handled the roster he had in Phoenix with how he'll view the team here, whether they have an investment in someone like Wiseman or not. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And then just to quickly explain my contrarian take on the starting lineup, just to throw it out there. I th- the only reason I actually settled on having Asar with Boyan next to him out in that starting five is just for two reasons. I think they're so invested in Asar Thompson that they're going to start him at this point. They're still really young. You're still not pushing for the playoffs, and you still haven't seen, like we talked about earlier, you literally have not seen minutes of Cade, Ivy, and Duran. So, like, it's not like you're going to interrupt anything by interjecting Asar Thompson into that, like an already established hierarchy or anything. So at this point, you can kind of just let them clean slate, figure it out, and see what happens. So I expect that, especially since they haven't benched a top 10 pick yet. So that's my expectation. But on top of that, I think you look at this roster and you go and say they're going to play a team like Boston. I don't know who on this roster I would rather have guarding Jason Tatum. And to be clear, I don't think it would go well for Asar Thompson. I think he would decidedly lose that battle. But like, I don't want to stick Bojan on him. I don't want to stick Livers on him. Like, there's no one else that you could put on Jason Tatum other than Asar Thompson. So I almost feel like by default, with how much they're invested in him and the defensive versatility and at least like 5 fouls that he could throw on someone on the other team, I think that he's going to start. So with that, I think you ask whether Stewart or Bojan is a better fit next to him. And generally, with how interchangeable the 3 and 4 role is on both ends of the court, I think Bojan's shooting is probably more valuable than Stewart's switchability. So that's why I lean that direction. It's not just for the memes.
I
Here's a
agree because a
question.
lot of Stu's switchability comes from him playing at the 5, which he won't be doing a lot. So, sorry, you go, Brady.
No, I was just thinking, okay, so like we think about it in a vacuum, like, okay, Asar Thompson comes in and he replaces Sadiq Bey. Like, and I don't think, and Sadiq Bey hasn't been around since February. So, like,
Right.
I wonder if we're thinking of it wrong. Like, I think I agree with you. I think that lineup is the best one against a team like that when you've got Asar being able to guard one of those guys. You've got Boyan spacing the floor still, and you've got Cade Ivy. You've got your whole kind of like your wingiest group out there. But I also wonder, is there a universe where like, and I know they're high on him, and I know every reporter will tell you this isn't true, but like, is there a world where Asar Thompson is like your supercharged version of like what Isaiah Livers' role was? Like playing some 3, playing some 4, not the shooter by any means, but better in every other aspect of basketball, physically, like
Yeah.
passing, rebounding, like, and that's like, I don't know how that helps them, but like, I wonder if that's the role where like in those matchups you can go small and he can play 4 in stretches in like certain matchups, certain games. Because Boston's one of those teams where like they could see you're starting Boyan and Asar to try and combat their wings. And like they could be like, okay, well, we're going to start Al Horford and we're going to start Rob Williams. So good luck. Like they could, get you either way. So like I wonder if that's kind of the plan is less about him just being a pure 3 and him being like a 4 in spots like you're saying, Wes, which I could see in the right matchups. And maybe maybe we see it more in the flow of the game than we do
Yeah.
in a tangible like starting lineup way.
For sure. And YouTube user here, Asar might play the role Hamid did last year, which I could see as
That's
well.
something Bryce has been saying. Supercharged Tommy D.
Yeah, I talked to Bryce about this one time when this is like before Hami's like last breakout. Also, has he not been signed yet? Like,
No, not that I've
No.
seen, which
But-
is wild
Crazy.
to me.
That's kind of.
But don't we think, yeah,
he's
some of it's
imperfect,
because
that's
of all the trades, like because of Harden and Lillard, like people are sort of just, maybe
Yeah, it
that's
has
why
to be.
these
He's an
guys, because
NBA
Kelly
guy.
Oubre, another guy who hasn't been signed, like there's some.
Yeah.
None of these guys are like max guys
Maybe.
clearly or mid-level guys, but there's some names out there still that haven't been signed.
Yeah, that's true. And one time, like within the last year when we were like kind of trying to figure out how this roster fit, like the conversation of like what does Hami do? It was before he came in and finally had his last hurrah. But like Bryce and I had the same idea that like maybe he's just a four and we haven't thought to like maybe he hasn't come to terms with the fact that he was a four, who was just an energy big, who wasn't very big. And like once he kind of embraced that, that's what really kind of propelled him to being, one of the Pistons' more important players for that like 15 game stretch before he got hurt. So like I think that's like that to me that's the floor, absolute floor of what Thompson does this year. Whether he plays the floor, whether he comes off the bench or starts, like I think that if Hami gave you 9 points, 2 rebounds, 3 rebounds, and an assist, I think that, and maybe how many stocks? One stock per game. I would expect Asar to give you double of those steals and blocks, so like two of those per game, maybe like 3, 4 rebounds and like 3, 4 assists, and then like 9 points, 10 points. Like if he went out and did that and was like the menace he is on defense, which Hami by no means was, I'd be cool as a cucumber.
Yeah.
Like that's exactly what I want a wing to do on this team is everything. Just do a little bit of everything and play defense. Like we've had guys who've done this
Yeah.
or that, but just do it all and do it okay. And I'll be completely cool with that. 19 years old or 20.
No, I
think that's
agree.
also
Honestly, that's like
exciting.
my expectation at this point is that he does that. Like, I don't think the box score is going to be anything insane, but I think he's going to make a lot of impact. And
I do.
I
Yeah,
think they're
I
going to need
agree
him out
with.
there.
And I think he's come at the perfect time of this Pistons rebuild because there's not going to be like if he had have come after Cade's draft or in the 2021 draft, and we're expecting him to come in alongside Kelly and Hayes to sort of create and score. Like he's get like I think the expectations and the pressure on him would be a lot different just from the fan base. But I think he's coming in at the perfect time where there's obviously two young ball handlers. He can sort of just play that complementary role. And that's sort of what I really took away from watching him at Summer League is like, especially in the first couple of games, like playing alongside Ivy. I know there was like, he didn't get as many possessions and that, but he's just able to like plug holes. Like he was cutting, the rebounding was awesome to see. Like, I think that stuff's all scalable for his rookie season, first couple of years while he's figuring out the jumper. So I'm going to get to another question here. To do with Cade. How important do you guys think do you think free throw attempts will be for Cade's efficiency in comparison to his 3-point percentage?
Ooh, good
Come
question.
back to me.
Wes?
Okay.
Check something.
I'll take it. That's a really good question, though, YouTube user. That's a good one. I'm going to lean to the free throw attempts. I think if he's going to get to the line more than he did, because what was it last year? Two
It's like
or
just
three,
over
something
3.
like that.
It's like
Just over
3.1,
3.
I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So if he could double that, that
Ooh.
would be because he's a good free throw shooter. So if he's getting 6 and he's making 4.5, like that would be really good. That's an extra 4.5 points that he's getting pretty easily and quickly. I mean, we all know the best scorers in the league get to the free throw line a ton and they make a ton of their free throws. So I think I would lean that way. And then on top of that, I mean, Jack, you and I have talked before. That 3-point percentage, I think, has a pretty hard ceiling on it. I think Cade's a really good 3-point shooter. I don't think he's going to be taking the types of 3-point attempts that are conducive to like 40% a game. Uh, so I think he's probably capped out in that 37-ish range anyway, like at his peak. So next year, if he's at 34 from 3 and he's actually getting to the line 6 times a night, I think that the fact he's getting to the line that often probably played a bigger a role in him being more efficient that season, more so than the 3-pointers did.
All right. Here's two guys. They both played under 60 games last year. They both averaged 23 points per game. And they both shot 84% from the free throw line. So, like, metrically speaking, we can think that, like, Cade's a good free throw shooter. He makes them when he gets them. And, like, 23 to 25 points would be, like, to me, I would love to see if he averaged 23 a game, 25 a game, that'd be great, right? So the difference between these two players, and I'm not going to tell you their names because it'll skew your opinion of this. One guy shot 11 threes per game, shot 38%. One guy shot 4 per game, shot 37%. They both only got to the line 3 to 4 times per game, and they both shot again 84, 85%. So like I think the question about it is the efficiency or importance is, does he shoot, how many threes do you think he shoots per game versus how many free throws does he get? Because I think there's a correlation in most times to where the guys who shoot more free throws shoot less threes. The guys who shoot more threes shoot less free throws. So like what's a number where you guys would say if Cade's shooting X threes per game, it's good for the Pistons offense, assuming he's shooting to the caliber that you expect, 36, 35, 37%. 6. Okay.
Yeah, I'm
I
like
think
5 to 6 as well.
that's
Because
low. That's the crazy part is that's low. Like that's below
Yeah, I
Anthony
know.
Edwards. That's below Zach LaVine. That's below Julius Randle, Laurie Marketing. Like so if that's the number of threes he's shooting, then I would say the free throw efficiency has to get significantly higher because he hasn't proven that he can get to the line and earn those free throws. He can make them, but he can't get there. And so the two guys I mentioned, the dude who shot 11 threes per game was LaMelo Ball. Now, I think if I had told you that, you would be like, well, he's nothing like Cade because LaMelo Ball would shoot it from 60 feet if he was open. And that's true. And the other side of it is Bradley Beal. And Beal is like an interesting comparison because I look at Beal every year. Like I play fantasy basketball and I'm like, why don't you shoot 8 threes a game? He doesn't do it because he shoots 10 mid-range jumpers every night. And he like gets to the line or he gets to the rim and stuff. So like two different dudes. One dude who just cranks threes and doesn't shoot free throws. One guy who lives in the mid range and plays like, the game that we all give DeMar DeRozan credit for. So like, does Cade fall in between that, or is he more of one or the other? I would like to see him shoot closer to 10 threes a game if he's hitting them, if he's shooting a good percentage, just because I think the free throw thing, like, I don't know how you remedy that, like other than just getting respect or becoming stronger. Maybe that's the thing is we haven't seen him in so long that maybe he's just a strong MFer now, and like he gets there and he gets the contact that looks like he's drawing it and not like just taking it and kind of the Ivy thing where he's going away from that.
So, Jen,
yeah,
before you respond, you'll want to know this. Cade Cunningham 3-point attempts. His rookie year 5.7. Last year, where it felt like he was taking less because he was trying to get to the mid range and to the rim. 5.1, not hardly a difference. So interesting.
Okay.
He's been right at about 5 both years, which I didn't realize. I wouldn't have guessed it.
Yeah, I thought he was maybe close. I thought he was closer to 7 as a rookie. I thought he was jacking up heaps, but yeah, it's interesting. I just think I say 5 to 6 threes because I just think he found such a comfortability in that mid-range area last season. And even watching the Team USA scrimmage and the Ricoh Heinz stuff, like he just doesn't like jack a lot of threes, like relatively for like other players at his position or like players like LaMelo Ball and Zach LaVine. Like I think he's just got such a comfortability, and I feel like he's going to be running a ton of pick and roll, obviously, like, and just getting to that mid range. And I sort of want him attacking downhill because if he's not creating and just settling for threes or stepping back for threes out of pick and roll, like just not sure what the rest of the offense looks like, but maybe Monty Williams, maybe I'm just sort of used to Dwayne Casey offenses. No shade to Dwayne,
I think that
yeah.
would require what you said there. I think like, getting downhill and running all that pick and roll and stuff like that's like he's going to fill, like you think about role wise, like he's going to fill some hybrid between what Devin Booker did and what Chris Paul did, probably more of the Chris Paul thing, only with like a significantly higher eye for scoring. But like, I think in general, just, if he is as deadly from 15 feet as he was last year, like they're going to make him shoot threes. So that's going to help if he can make them. And if he can make them, it will make him like, I wouldn't say unguardable, very, very difficult to guard. So like that's the thing. And the one thing too is like Suns guards and wings did not shoot that many threes in general last year. Like Chris Paul was never a 3-point shooter. Booker took 6 a game. Durant has his threes have gone down as he's gotten older because I think he, again, big mid-range guy. So like I think that mid-range stuff, you're right, Jack, like that's going to be the bread and butter for him because it's his strength, and I think they'll play everything they do to his strength.
So, Wes, do you have any thoughts? Any final thoughts on Cade, the scorer?
What's your guess,
I think,
Wes? Wes? What do you think he'll average? What's the high? What's the best case point average for him? What's the median case, and what would like bum you out?
if he was under 20, it'd bum me out. So I'll just throw that. That one's easy. But I think my expectation is somewhere around the 23 range with a high end of maybe 24 and a half, 25. Like once you start getting too much over 20, it gets really hard. I mean, increasing your average from 2 to 4 points per game, pretty easy. From 23 to 25, really hard. So yeah, I'm kind of in that 23-ish range with not too much ceiling above it. But yeah, if he's at even if he's at 19 and a half next year, I'd be pretty disappointed in how the year turned out.
What if it was 10 assists and 10 rebounds?
Okay, if he's averaging a triple double, I'm happy. Doesn't matter the points anymore. He could be going 10, 10, 10. I'm over the moon.
All right, I'm going to try and get through some of these other questions here. Young Paid has one about what is Asar's shooting average this summer. I don't actually know. I think Summer League he must have shot sub 30%.
Summer League was 27.
27?
27,
yeah.
It was
from 3.
27 and a half. So we're both the exact same rounding error.
In those Ricoh Heinz runs, like I said, I'm certain they cut out a heap of misses. So we don't actually really know from those because I did sit down to calculate the box score and then I realized they were cutting things out. That's really sad of me to admit, but they were definitely cutting out misses.
Jack got to the end. Was like,
Jack got to the end. Was like, the hell out of you.
You got to the end. You were like, "Holy shit, guys! Cade Cunningham is shooting 100, 100, 100
well,
this summer."
Like I really. So it's like a 41-minute video. The first scrimmage they were posting misses, but then I realized as the next 3 to 4 games they were just having the makes. So we don't know. I can confirm. I'm confident that. Yeah, the Ricoh Heinz runs, they would have missed shots. But my question out of this from Young Paid was just mainly for Brady, because Wes and I have spoken about this a bit. But what do you see Asar shooting from 3 as a rookie? And I guess maybe just when do you think he gets to a point of being an average 3-point shooter, if at all?
What's average?
I don't know. 35?
30, 35-ish,
yeah,
34,
yeah.
35.
Just to touch on the 36. Yeah.
I think the problem with what happened in Summer League was, you mentioned it before, he was doing a lot of ball watching when Jaden Ivey played. And then once he started getting the ball, again, it wasn't like a real point guard or like really NBA teammates around him when he was out there. It was basically just Marcus Sasser would do stuff and find him, or he would just score in transition. And like his jumper did not look very pretty in Summer League either. But I think, I think he'll shoot less, like under 30%. I don't think he'll be like that far under. Because like if you think about Cade, I think shot like 29 or 30% as a rookie. And it wasn't good, but it didn't feel like Josh Smith bad. Like it wasn't that bad. So like part of me
it's a low bar, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think it's also just volume. Volume makes bad shooting worse, obviously, and it makes it feel worse to you when you're watching it. So like if he's shooting 2 threes a game, I want him shooting threes. Like that's the thing. Is like even if he's not making, the amount I want, he needs to get those reps. He needs to figure out how to shoot when a defender's coming at him. He needs to figure out how to take that one dribble and shoot. And I think James Edwards from The Athletic has mentioned this before, but like sometimes Asar's jumper looks like it was built in a lab, and it was almost built with like too specific of coordinates. Like there's no like, this is how I shot it when I was 12 years old left in his shot. It's just the doctors told me to shoot it this way. I'm going to shoot it this way. So like, I think the more comfortable he gets shooting the ball in his role with this team will be better. But I would say like next year, I'd hope he was in the low 30s. Because I think honestly, a guy like that, if he tightens his handle, like that low shooting won't be that big of a deal. Because I'm pretty sure like a lot of guys in the NBA have gone, yeah, they might be robots. Honestly, that's very possible. But a lot of guys in this league have like made a living shooting subpar from three, but good enough if they are like freaks. And those guys are robots and they're freaks and they can do it. So like, the same questions I have about Asar, I'd have about Ahmed in that way. But I think they're both going to work out. Like they're both going to be very good players.
For sure.
So I think I've thrown this comparison out there before, and I want to hear what you think about it, Brady, and then two, I want to hear your Asar Thompson like comp, what you think he might be able to be. For me, I think one day he looks a bit like Gerald Wallace if everything goes right. That's where I'm at with it. Kind of that combo forward, real good defense, good shot blocker, can actually score it fairly well, even though he can't shoot. Like, I don't think the shot's ever coming. I'll just throw that out there. I think he'll be in the low 30s top end outcome.
I can see that. The difference is I think Gerald Wallace was a pure wing, and I think he was a tweener 3-4 before that was kind of a thing. And there was never any sort of like ball handling creation. Like if he could create off the dribble or even handle the ball, like I think that would have unlocked a lot of things for very fun but very mid Bobcats teams back in the day. But I made this comparison like months ago, but like I think there are some Andrei Kirilenko things about Asar.
Oh,
And
I like
think
that.
era wise, it's a weird comparison and it's like the rare cross racial comparison, which I'm very proud of. But like I think defensive ability, athletic, speed, bounce, all that stuff. Like Kirilenko was bigger. He was built kind of a little different, but he was still a string bean, like for his size. Like he was just a very stringy dude, like lanky. I just think there's a lot of comparisons there, and like the key to it all is like he can dribble. Asar can dribble. Like he's not a great ball handler, but he knows what to do. I think a lot of guys in the NBA, we talk about like if he can learn to handle the ball better, he'll be great. Like handling the ball is one thing. Like knowing what to do with it once you can dribble is another thing. And I think that that's the one thing that both those brothers have in common is the Thompsons can process what they're going to do and they kind of can see that next play. Whether Asar can get there as well as Amen is another discussion, but like that's what sets him apart and that's what makes the comparison to Kirilenko interesting is because like defense, rebounding, a little bit of shooting, athleticism, and like enough playmaking to keep your offense moving. Because like Andrei Kirilenko was playing with, John Stockton at the very tail end and Karl Malone at the very tail end. So like a lot of what he was doing was as this tertiary player. So I think there's a lot of stuff that Asar can do in that same respect with this team in terms of just being a third kind of banana that knows how to move the ball, make shots when he has to, and runs and plays hard.
Jack, do you have any
100%.
thoughts before I throw out something fun?
No, throw out something fun.
All right. I'm not necessarily proud of what I just did, but you compared him to Andrei Kirilenko, the coolest nickname of all time. And I went, well, what on earth could AT-9 be? So I just Googled it. Turns out it's a plane. It was an old prop plane. That's pretty sweet. Used in World War II, I think. So there you go. Similar kind of nickname potential.
A World War II plane.
He's a World War II plane. It was a trainer.
It's actually interesting.
But
yeah,
still
the
a
nicknames.
cool looking plane.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does glide like a plane. So
it's true.
Let's start that now. 89. Let's start it up.
Sounds like you're saying the number 89, like 89. We might have an issue there. But didn't the Pistons win a championship in 89? I don't know.
There you go. There you go. It works both ways.
We got one more question here from Greg Burns, which I think is a good one. We sort of chatted about this, but he wants to know, isn't there a decent chance Monty Williams could decide to can the too big thing before the season? It's his team, or do we think he feels obligated? Brady?
Yeah, I think that I don't think it will make it to game one. Like, I don't think the too big thing is to me is starting both of them or playing both of them together for longer than the brief stretches that we see guys play together. But
Sorry to just jump in, because just to clarify for some people might be listening, do you consider Isaiah Stewart and Jalen Duren a too big lineup?
No, I consider Jalen Duren, Marvin Bagley, and James Wiseman that like rat king of big, large dudes as being that. No, I think Stewart's. I think like at this point, I understand people who don't. There's somebody on Twitter who I can't think of his user off the top of my head who like every time I say something nice about Isaiah Stewart, he has a retort for me. So like we talk about like I hear people who don't like him. I know it, but like at this point, like the commitment has been made. The like narrative is built in from the team, from the front office. Like he ain't going anywhere. I just don't. I think it's a waste of effort and mental capacity to doubt his role with this team at this point until Monty Williams shows us that he doesn't feel that way. But I think that was part of the thing was like, this is our core. This is how we see it. And he's like, yeah, I agree. Like he wouldn't have come here otherwise. So like, I think it's those other three big guys. And like I said, I definitely don't think that Wiseman and Bagley will play together. I think that first 20 games, you'll see a mix of those two. I think it'll be very important to both those guys. And I saw there's something on Twitter I saw the other day where it was like, who's this season's most important, like, stretch for them. And it was like, if James Wiseman plays like crap for the first 20 games, like it's curtains for all intents and purposes. Like he's a minimum player after that, because I think he's a minimum player after this anyways. But that first stretch of games, whoever makes that rotation is going to be big. And I think it will be Bagley, because I think Bagley has the big contract. If Bagley plays somewhat well, you can maybe trade him for another bad contract that fits better. Whereas Wiseman is just who he is, So that's my POV. But I think, I don't think we'll be seeing a bunch of the same stuff we saw at the end of last year now.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, Jack, you and I have, I think we've briefly mentioned this before, but like, I get where the concern is coming from, that maybe the front office might try to strong arm Monty Williams into, conforming to this vision that some people think that they have. But it's a little bit of a chicken and an egg scenario looking back with Dwayne Casey. Like, was Dwayne Casey just doing whatever the heck he thought, throw it on the wall, see if it sticks, because they were a terrible team and he was just trying to keep things together? Or was Troy Weaver telling him, like, you have to play these guys? I don't know. I just don't think that they paid Monty Williams that much money to have Troy Weaver be the coach of the Detroit Pistons. I think Monty Williams is going to play whoever the heck he wants to play. I think he's going to do whatever lineups he wants. I mean, they obviously have an organizational goal, right? He's going to fall within line with that goal because he obviously agrees with it. He's here. But in terms of actual from above, hey, you need to play James Wiseman next to Jalen Duren, I just don't think that that's a thing that's going to happen. I'm not even sure if it's a thing that's happened before, to be quite honest.
Yeah, it's a good point you raised, Wes, was just like the investment in Monty, and like specifically Tom Gore's investment in Monty, and not just because of the dollar amount, but more so just like the hiring of Monty largely was because they were steering away from Monty because they'd given up on that hope of landing him. And it was Tom Gores who like just opened up the checkbook, obviously. But I feel like Monty, more so than a coach that comes in that's just like, I know the owner probably has a role to play in hiring most coaches, but I just feel like Tom Gore's involvement in this hiring was like significant, more so than potentially normal. And like Monty's going to have a voice no matter what. Like can't see in this scenario Troy Weaver overruling Monty. And those two have a relationship too. Like I just can't see that happening.
I can't see a scenario where I can't see a scenario where the last 3 years, I think Tom Gores is a very aloof owner. I think he just pays for what he wants because he's a billionaire. That's fine. I want an owner like that. I don't think he is dumb enough to look at the last 3 years and be like, yeah, Troy's still driving every single thing we do. Like, they did not make Monty Williams the richest coach in NBA history to have somebody else playing puppet master behind him. And if they did, the problems with this organization are much deeper than whether Jaden Ivey and Cade Cunningham can play together. Like, that's my
Very true.
things are much more deeper than that, you know?
Yep.
Very, very true. And yeah, I think the summer league stuff, like back to the two bigs, like the Wiseman and Duran stuff, like I think that was just purely, I think Wes, you raised this because of Isaiah Livers' injury and him missing summer league. Like maybe he was destined to start at the 4. And then also it's just like summer league. I wasn't the PR. Minutes they yeah, like, but just watching them on court together, like not once did I think this is like, I wasn't impressed with them together. Individually, they did some nice things, but like that tandem together, like I hope I never see that because it's not. That is not winning basketball.
If they brought James Wiseman to Las Vegas in year 4, and they were like, first one off the bench, dude, don't worry. Like,
yeah,
optically, that is bad in general. And I think that was the whole reason those two played together. I think the Livers thing, maybe they probably would have liked to have them there. But like those two, if they were going to be there, they were going to play together at the start of those games. And that was just how they had to do it. And it was like, sorry, Jack, you can deal with it later, dude. Just figure it out. You know, like it was just kind of the situation that was levied on him.
Yeah,
for sure.
No, I agree.
You actually didn't answer the question earlier, Brady. Who do you think is the backup big? Or maybe you did and I missed it, but out of Wiseman and Bagley. Okay,
I think Bagley long term. I think you'll see them both get a shot. Like it'll almost feel like a tryout that first 20 games. Because I think realistically, like I've always said this and no one really gives a shit, but like Marvin Bagley and Cade Cunningham had great chemistry. Like they had a thing that stretch of games they played, and we didn't get to see it at all last year because he was hurt. But I think that'll win out in the end. But I think they'll both get a chance. But I just think that, like, you know, this whole 0.5 second thing, I keep thinking about it, and like no player on this roster speaks to me less in a take the ball and make a decision way than James Wiseman, who will just and Bagley's not much better, but I know that Bagley's willing to swing it around and then go repost. But Wiseman is like, catch it. He's thinking, do I shoot it right here or do I back them down? Like, there's not like, do I pass it out? It's do I shoot it here or shoot it there? So like, it's neither option's good. But I don't know. I think that like the Wiseman thing, barring him being like a changed man, is not long for this world, not long for our world, I should say.
And just to piggyback off you there too, as long as James Wiseman is who he was last year when he was on the team, obviously he could make huge improvements. So there's that, and we could all be surprised, and that would be great. I would love it. But neither of those two are good defenders. They're kind of equally bad, I would say, on that end in different ways. They're bad in different ways, but they're both not good. So Marvin Bagley's a better offensive player. Like Marvin Bagley will give you 20 plus more often than James Wiseman will. And he'll do it on less attempts without holding the ball as long. Like, as it stands, when the season ended last year, Marvin Bagley's the better player. And it's not like he's old either. So if we're just going to go purely on merits, like Marvin Bagley's going to be the backup big. I expect it to be Wiseman just because it seems like they want to find out what they've got with him. But I'm with you. If after 20 games it ain't working, like, it ain't working. He's out.
I think that's a good way to end the show on some Wiseman talk and Bagley. Any final thoughts? Anything, Brady? Anything you need to get off your chest? Okay, actually, I do have something I want to ask you before we go.
Go for it.
And look, I do plan to have you on before the season starts again. Today's been awesome. But what do you think, as of today, the Pistons' win-loss is? Or how many wins?
Ooh.
Um, Last year I fell just fully for this team, and I was like, Cade Cunningham's going to lift them, and I was like, the win loss on in Vegas is 29.5. They're gonna blow that out of the water and win 34. I would say this year, like best case 32, 33 wins. And like I think best case is my expectation. Like even if because I just look at like the way the team's built, the guys and the coach. And I just think, if they were fully trying and giving a shit for 82 games last year, maybe they win 26, 27 games, 25 games if Cade plays, more than that. But like I just think in general there's still, roles to fill, things they need to get better at. But I think 30 some games, whether it's 32, 34, 33, like I just think that is a good step in the right direction, obviously. And I think the one thing I'm positive about this season versus last is that I think we'll walk out of this year looking at the roster and saying, okay, I saw that this guy could do this and he couldn't do that. And it's actually going to matter. For the first time in a while, we're going to look at these
Yeah.
players and we're going to say, he either fits what we're doing or he doesn't. And like that's fine. That's the way sports go. It's not being critical or like negative about someone. Either this guy's gonna fit the program and work or he's not gonna. Like we're done experimenting with, shitty bust here or bust there. Like it's time to try and figure out what guys will help you win. Because I think the entire front office is like next, not this season, but next season, like we gotta be good. Like we have to be legitimately like good. We can't just be like just squeaking in kind of thing. Like they've got to show tangible progress. They've got to be kind of like Thunder this year in order for anyone to buy into this thing working, both fans and obviously Tom Gore. So like it's one of those situations where like, you may sell a Boyan Bogdanovic at the deadline, but you need to sell him for something that's more immediate. It can't be for something that you'll be able to play with in 2025. Like
Yeah.
the gears are turning, and winning 30 games this year would be a great step, but it still means you've got to win 10 to 12 to 15 more games next year in order for you to really feel comfortable in your job if you're, you know, the people who are trying to make this work in year 5, year 6. That's my take. That's not a reporting. I
Yeah.
just feel that like no team gets the leash that the Pistons front office has gotten. And again, it goes back to nobody's really watching that actually would criticize it or call it out. But like we're getting close to the time where like the proof has to be there, or it's you've got to find somebody else who can do it.
Man, I don't know how I feel after that.
It's not. I feel
You're
like,
the-
and I feel like it's a very strong take, but I really don't think it's that outlandish or negative because I think if you look at the teams that have rebuilt for as long as the Pistons have, we're going on what year 4 of this, and there's a full expectation by most fans that this is not going to be a playoff year. So 5 years into a rebuild, like
yeah.
even the process 76ers, who basically like tore it down very similarly to the Pistons, even, they were probably a little more, but they were in the playoffs in year 5. Like they had found the guys. And the key to their rebuild working out was that the guy that made it tick finally got healthy. So like maybe that's all it takes. And maybe like, if Cade Cunningham averages 25, 8 and 8, like, maybe he's more impactful and lifts them to higher ceilings. But like I just think there's still the need for somebody else to make this work. And I just think that like, the front office gotten so much leeway that like
So, yeah.
I
So
don't
this
know.
is where and I know we're just still trying to wrap up here, but this is where I think going back to what you said earlier in the show, Brady, like you feel like having these 4 lottery picks organically grow. This is where I'm with you because if they're to win 40 games next, like I'm talking not this season, the following, like you're still only going to have your core 4 players like are still very young. So like when I think of young guys under the age of like 22, 23 winning like 40 to 50 games, like don't know. So this is where it's like I feel like there probably is a trade and it's just a matter of like I feel like Cade's definitely the one that stays. And who like partners up with him because unless these 4 guys all just hit like OKC or, I mean, I don't know, like they still traded Harden as we spoke about. It's just something to consider, like with this rebuild. Like this season, I think is largely still going to be like development mixed in with like competitiveness. Like they're trying to win. They need to show progression for ownership and the fan base. But yeah, if they're going to try really push and be seriously competitive the following season, like I feel like there's a trade at some point because just having such young guys. Yeah.
I was just saying, it's funny. It's really funny that like all 3 of us are in the exact same place, and then we're in just like slightly different spots on when we think something's going to go down. Everything that we just talked about, everything that you said, Brady, I'm fully expecting a trade for some 28, 27, 29-year-old small cap, lowercase s star player to like fill out the rest of it, whether they're really pushing for the play-in or not. Like I think that they are unloading Bojan, Burks, and whatever they can figure out to do with draft picks to just try to push the chips in for the year following. Because, like you said, I mean, you don't get 5 years for free if you're a GM. You don't get that. That doesn't happen. So there's a fire that's been lit underneath him, and he's going to go. Like I think it's happening. I just think it's happening sooner because a lot of the assets they have go away in the off season.
It's so true.
They do. The one that you gain is that you can trade the pick if it doesn't convey to the Knicks. So there's that.
The sooner that they can get rid of that, the sooner they can. The best case scenario for the Detroit Pistons is that they organically make the playoffs this year, and that pick conveys in a bad draft or an underwhelming draft, as we're led to believe this one's going to be, and that they have the freedom to trade it again. Because I think that would, like, if they, what is it, top 15 at this point, so it's basically lottery protected. Like, make the playoffs this year. Even win the play-in, get rid of the pick. Like, sure, it sucks in the moment, but then like you're able to make a big trade. And if like, shit hits the fan for some reason, like in a couple of years, Cooper Flag, the next like, blue chipper prospect comes up, like you either have the chance if things go bad to get him, or you can trade away a pick where somebody else could think like I can use this maybe if things go wrong for them and I can get him. So I don't know. We're thinking about 2026 now, but
my point Cooper Flag.
My point is that the Pistons will win like 30-something games. I would love to see them win more, but I've gotten to the point with this franchise where I need to see it to believe it.
Jack, you wait for the deadline, and then you guarantee that pick to the Knicks in exchange for Julius Randle. All right, drop ball around.
Please,
let's finish the show on that.
Let's not.
Wes is like low-key big on Julius Randle, so I think we'll leave it.
We got to close it up.
We'll finish on that note. I think we'll finish on that note. It's been a pleasure having you on, Brady. As I said, we'd love to get you on at least one more time before the season starts. Hopefully, a couple more. But tell the people where they can find you.
Yeah, I'm on X/Twitter. At Brady Fred, which you can see on my name here, and then I think I'm on Threads. I think I'm. Let me verify, because this is one opportunity to get my Threads out there. I don't want to fuck up what the name is. Hang on. It's Brady Fred, no apostrophe, just all one word. ITS Brady Fred. So, if we all have to move there someday because the Twitter machine dies, I'll be there.
I love it, and of course you can find Brady's work over at Detroit Bad Boys as well. Yep. With the season ramping up, we'll be looking to get some more content out there. And as always, thanks to my co-host Wes. Always a pleasure, my friend. Special mention to Sean Corp, the managing editor of Detroit Bad Boys, for making this show happen. We're all keeping him in our thoughts and prayers as he unfortunately lost his mother recently. So prayers to Sean. And thanks to everyone for tuning in. We know we're in the doldrums of the off season, but we've somehow churned out an hour 40 here with an active comment session. So we appreciate each and every one of you. And yeah, until next week, peace.